A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Respected brothers and sisters in Islam, respected brothers and sisters in humanity. And may the peace and blessings of Almighty God, the creator of the heavens and the earth, be upon all of us. May Allah bless us with sufficient guidance that we would be saved from the torments of the grave, we'll be saved from the fires of hell. May Allah give us guidance sufficiently that we would see the best of the paradise. Today, inshallah, I propose to deal with a very important topic, the topic of inheritance and wills. It is very, very important for us to understand this topic in context, the importance of it, and I pray to Allah with full sincerity that I would be able to motivate and to encourage persons to do the right thing. So I want to start off today by speaking about a general scenario where persons would have died, and then I will speak about those who are living. Let's speak about those who are already dead. Persons who would have died and they did not put a will in place, and they have a natural expectation that the persons who they would have left behind would do justice to their assets. They have a natural expectation. I belong to an Islamic community. I pray in the masjid as regular as I can. I go Jummah. The Imam knows me. He knows my family and the Imam in the community, we are good. And then he passes away. And then the entire family, some may be focused on his assets and wills, assets and so on, and some may just be around. They don't have a clue because maybe they are tender age 6, 7, 8, 9, they are tender age, and they're not focused on material things. And then there's an expectation that the believers from amongst those who have been left behind, who are potentially those persons who are qualified to benefit from his assets. I'm using his to reference his, her, to benefit from the assets. That person may or may not be a loudmouth, a strong, firm person. They may be, for example, let's use both scenarios. Someone passed away, there's someone in the family who's dominant. And according to Sharia, they may or may not understand what it is would be entitled to them. So let's say, for example, a man passes away and his wife is left behind. And the wife worked out all the maths and so on. She would have gotten guidelines from whoever, and she had been guided to say, well, okay, I would benefit, let us say 1/8. 1/8 of the assets and so on is really what I would be entitled to. But if I don't take on Islamic Sharia, and I don't take on the laws and the guidelines, the rules that has been ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then I could get a 100%. So why should I press for Sharia law, Sharia guidelines, when outside of that I can gain potentially more? And this seems to be what is happening in a large number of cases where individuals are leaving this world and they did not put their wills and so on in order. The laws of the country is very silent on some issues that Islam pay a lot of attention to. So Islamic laws pay a lot of attention to details as it relates to wills, as it relates to inheritance. And it's very unfortunate that Muslims, a large number who I know, and I cannot speak for the entire country, a large number of Muslims who I know, they have not or they did not put their lives in order. And today their families have suffered great losses to individuals who had a louder voice, had more dominance by virtue of age, and so on. So a man and a wife, 2 persons, family, and they have, let us say, 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, If the man passes away, then the Islamic laws as it relates to what his wife is entitled to, what his boy children are entitled to, and what his girl children are entitled to, it is well known. And Islamic law also speaks to parents, brothers, sisters, it speaks to grandchildren, it speaks to a number of different categories. It speaks to persons who have more than one wife, and it speaks to a lot of details. However, for those who would have studied the Sharia position and so on with regards to wills and inheritance, you would know that in the event that this person exists, there is a son and there is a daughter, then there is no need to take on other family members as part of the conversation. If there is no son and no daughter, then of course you now have to look at other relatives who are qualified and so on. So this is how I want to start off today, by talking about a number of persons who would have passed away, and they are believers or they are Muslims who have turned a blind eye to administering the Sharia position as it relates to wills and inheritance. They have turned a blind eye to it. And a number of people, when they grow old and they become educated, they're no longer 9 and 10. 10 years would have passed, so now it's 10 plus 9 or 10 plus 10. They're now 19 or 20 years old. And now they have gone to little classes and so on, or they go on the internet and they Google up what they Google up and so on, and they now come to learn that my father would have passed away 10 years ago, and I being the only son, or one out of 2 sons, I am by Islamic law, I am entitled to receive A, B, C, D, E. But I have never received anything. I never received anything from the assets he would have left behind. As a matter of fact, I don't even know what he left behind, because my uncle or my relative they dominated the process from day one. And the imams in my community, or the imam in the masjid I attended to when my father would have died, he did not intervene in the process because no one invited him to intervene. All these excuses as to why persons who are believers did not take part. And this could be very, very scary, because this is an unfortunate reality. I know a number of persons who would have passed away. And of course, it is difficult to force yourself into the administrative role, because the family could simply say to you, I am going elsewhere to overlook, for someone else to overlook my distribution in accordance to the Islamic Sharia. So immediately they shut you out. I'm going to this institution or that institution. I'm going by Sheikh A or Sheikh B, Imam A or Imam B, full stop. So therefore, you as the Imam in the community, they would have found a nice way to tell you, thanks but no thanks. Secondly, you may go to a family whose loved one would have passed away, and they say, listen to me, don't come back here. We go see about our own business. Do you have any power to insist that you get involved in their personal affairs? If it is the husband or the male or the father did not come to you as the imam and did not say to you, did not list for you all his assets and where his monies are and what properties he have and where the properties are, how many wives he has, how many children he have, who are his brothers and sisters, what is his mother name, father name, who is alive. He did not give you all that data. It is difficult for you to sit in isolation and determine what the inheritance of the different surviving individuals should be. And I'm struggling to pull this point together, because I am also, while I'm speaking, reflecting on a number of harsh realities that exist. So I'm saying again in simple, that individuals need to pay attention to this very sensitive topic of wills. And if it is you die outside of having a will prepared, then you leave your loved ones who you may have an expectation that the imam or the Muslim circle that you belong to would do justice to all your loved ones. If you go back now and look at persons who you know who would have died, and you go to them and just ask a basic question, was a will ever, was it ever done? Were you, and you ask basic questions to see what that family would have fared, what they would have gone through. It is easy for you to put in perspective a template and say, if these prominent people would have gone through all these challenges, then I can also expect, should I pass away, and should I pass away unexpectedly, this exact template that was applied to them, because I belong to the very same circles that this person belonged to. So what is the likelihood that I alone would get everything running picture perfect and smooth? And I'm saying that the likelihood that you alone, if you pass away, all your loved ones would in fact benefit the right way, then that is a big hope. And I also want to say that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks in the Holy Quran, chapter 2 and verses and chapter 4, speaks in details about wills and inheritance, and individuals are aware of it, they are aware of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, and they consciously neglect, they consciously shun, they consciously take a position that they are not going to use what Allah said to judge themselves by or to administer their family by, and they are not going to pay attention to it, then they have just walked into, they have opened the doorway and they would have walked out of Islam. It is that serious. Those who do not judge by what Allah says in the Holy Quran, they do not make decisions based on what Allah says in the Holy Quran. When the topic of wills and so on, and inheritance and so on, is spelled out in detail, if you consciously neglect or you consciously choose not to utilize the guidance of Allah, and you choose to use guidance or guidelines from elsewhere that you may feel may profit you more, if it is you don't pay attention to what Allah says, then you would have walked out of Islam. And there are a number of people who I am very, very concerned about. I'm concerned because when it comes to money and it comes to assets, when it comes to these particular topics, it seems as though they are silent for a reason. And the silence is because of enriching themselves in this life in a way that can cause them to be deprived of the real enrichments of the akhirah, of the hereafter, of the next life. And this is a kind of tough start. It's a tough start and a scary start. So where is the negligence in this conversation? Is the negligence in the person who, when they were alive, they failed to obey the commands as it relates to creating a will and documenting a will, or is it negligence on the other foot? When the person would have passed away, the leaders in the community, or the believers in the community, or the family members who are believers, is it that the negligence falls on them because they would have failed to do what they know they should be doing as it relates to administering a process in a particular way outlined by Allah in the Holy Quran? This is where the scale is going right now. And I'm saying, how about you going to blame the deceased? Especially when you are a potential beneficiary. So here it is, you are the son, and you're not the only son, but you are the eldest son. And your brother might be a minor, he might be 5 years old. You might be 18, he might be 5. Or you can put numbers anywhere. You can be 25, and he's 10. And your father would have passed away. And you know that your entitlement and your brother's entitlement, you know what your entitlement collectively should be. And you know what your sister's entitlement should be. And then you neglect to ensure that what is entitled to yourself and others happen that particular way. So whatever monies are in the bank, meaning liquid cash, whatever assets that he would have left behind, meaning houses, land, assets in whatever way, shares in different businesses, whatever assets that may exist, you fail to put it in perspective as at the time of his death and see the value of his assets and see the ratio, the percentage and so on that ought to be used for distribution and so on, and you fail to do justice when you could have done it. I'm saying your silence on the matter, your failure to execute, and you're falsely enriching yourself or others, or causing others to be enriched. All these things have to be put in the basket, and the conversation has to start from there. So that is my start for this topic. 15 minutes would have passed already. Wills and inheritance. Wills and inheritance, anything that has to do with assets, with money, with persons receiving in whatever way, something seems to be always clouded our judgment call. And there are too many people who are amongst us who can do better than they are doing. Because we can count. There are persons who would have died in our own Jamaat. Let us say in Trinidad and Tobago, different persons on different parts of the country are in fact looking on at this program, Wills and Inheritance. And let us say you belong to East, West, North, South, Central Tobago, different parts of Trinidad and Tobago. And you could start writing down from your own masjid. You know, in our masjid, I can remember this guy died last year, or this guy died last week, or this sister died last year, this sister died last week. You can record, or you can remember a few people in your community who would have passed away. Let us say you can recount 5 Muslim persons who from your particular community would have passed away. The next best question is it my business, or is it not my business? And the conversation can very well stop there, because that has been the attitude that we would have been taking all the time anyway. Really and truly, I am not no expert in wills and inheritance. I am not no expert. I can't work with all them details and so on. That's not my business. Secondly, I cannot go prying into these people's private lives, you know, brother or sister, you know, I understand. I know your father would have died, or your mother would have died, or your son would have died, whatever it is, whoever would have died. And I really want to find out whether or not Islamic laws or rules, if anyone administered your father's assets in such a way that it would have been Sharia compliant, would you be out of place to be asking that question? Or somebody might simply ask, well, who is you? Why are you trying to find out my business? Mind your own business. Go from here. A number of answers you can get. But I'm saying that I know a number of people who would have been deprived of justice, and a number of people who, as elders who know better, who fail to administer their loved ones' assets, and they would have deprived individuals, and the assets that the family would have left behind, the person would have left behind, starts dwindling and dwindling and dwindling, and all going in the same direction to maybe 1 or 2 persons who are enriching themselves falsely, and others who are also entitled to receive have not been receiving and will never receive, because they are decreasing the assets that would have been left behind as the days go by. How do we put that in perspective? How do we put it in perspective as it relates to our role, our duty, our responsibility? How do we put it in perspective that the person would have failed to prepare a will, and the survivors who he would have left behind, who are believers and who are aware, they likewise choose to consciously ignore what Allah says in the Holy Quran. And those who are unaware because they are not versed in wills and inheritance and so on, they fail to ask anyone for help or guidelines because they had access. They had access to liquid cash and access to properties, and they would have chosen to go a different route because of self-enrichment possibilities. How do we put all this in perspective? And where do we go from here as it relates to this topic? So inshallah, studio, if we can probably later on in the program, maybe next 10 minutes or so, we can probably give consideration to open the lines because people may want to have a say, right? And now persons are traveling for Hajj. And they are being asked I am saying, not they are being asked because people don't normally ask you. I am saying here that even those who are performing Hajj, Hajj is not a separate factor that brings wills and inheritance into perspective. When 3 days should not pass, where you have an opportunity to prepare a will and did not prepare it. You should not let time pass. And make it even worse when you decide to travel on a long journey. It does not only refer to Hajj. You are traveling wherever. It is not good that you would travel without preparing a will. Now, I myself would have started doing a number of things and gotten battle weary. I started doing marriages, for example, and all my weekends, during the week got bogged down because I am doing a service that is much needed. Persons want to meet with individuals for the purpose to see if potentially that person can be a good person for my daughter, for my son, and so on. And I embarked on that pathway of trying to have persons come together and go and meet them by their homes, meet them all over the place, go and try to understand their family background. And this cannot fit into a person's schedule just like that one Monday morning. But I ran into it. A number of persons are married today, alhamdulillah, based on the process steps and so on. We would have spent some time understanding family backgrounds and so on and so on and so on. At the end of the day, persons decided to get married and they are married today and living happily ever after. But I no longer do it because it takes too much time for every one person or every one marriage. It means that you have to investigate and spend time with both families. Sometimes you have to go and drink coffee and sit down with them and talk with them. And it's a lot of work. But the end result is fine, but the input is a lot. And now we're talking about wills and inheritance. Surely we can sit with people and we can sit with them and help them to understand how to prepare their wills and so on. But then there'll be a floodgate of people who will be calling and seeking an appointment, and they have to sit with you. They have to tell you all their business, tell you about their wife, their children, their brothers, their sisters, their aunts, grandfather, all their family members and so on. Because all is important, because should you die and you leave behind, you had a son today when you do the will. But at the point in time when you die, your son died before you for whatever reason. Or if there are persons in your family who are not Muslims and so on, how does the Sharia issue works with regards to non-believers inheriting and all these things? There are a number of important issues that influence the end result of the will. Or should I say influence the end result of the inheritance. So therefore, for anyone to start, a lot of your personal and private information has to be placed on the table. Imam, my issue is I have 3 wives. I have 8 children. I have cash in this bank, this bank, this bank. Liquid cash I have in these different banks. I have some money in unit trust, some money in Muslim Credit Union. This is where my money actually is, in different places. And I have land, I have house and land. I own 2 houses, I own lands here, there, and everywhere. This is my personal, this is a snapshot of my life. This is a snapshot of my life. This is my wife or my wives, my children, my assets, my liquid, tangible assets, cash and so on. I have vehicles. I have a boat. This is what I have. And I want to know, should I die or when I die, what information would be required to do a will that is Sharia compliant, that is Sharia compliant. I don't want to leave it for my surviving relatives, surviving beneficiaries to make that decision call for fear that I may put pressure on them. That others may want to talk louder than them. Others may want to dominate. Others may come one Monday morning after one person die. They come and just take the vehicle that he leave, and you start driving that vehicle as though that is now yours. You move in a property that he owned and just occupy it forever. And you go on the land that he owns and you start doing agriculture, or you do whatever you choose to do. You go to the banks and you are able to justify the funds coming in your direction by virtue of understanding what the laws of Triangle Tobago require, what you need to do. People have put on the papers and so on, when wills are probated and over there is no will, and people know how to get around and so on. But the real position I'm making is that how do you who are alive safeguard yourself from you failing? You don't want you to fail in terms of putting your life in order. Neither do you want the burden that should you fail, that your family are unable to put your assets and so on in perspective as it relates to the Sharia compliance, as it relates to Sharia compliance. And this I'm saying, I've said a lot of things there without maybe zeroing in as yet. How do we fix what would have already passed? And how do we ensure that what is to come will not fall in the same category like what would have passed? So in other words, persons would have already passed away, and they may have left let us say, $10,000. I'm calling small figures for conversation, because some persons leave less than 10, some people leave more than 10. Let's say $10,000 they leave, they would have left behind. And I'm saying that if it was accessible by someone else for whatever reason, what was supposed to happen with regards to the distribution, what was supposed to happen with regards to paying off of the debts of the person who would have been dead, what is priority, and so on. Who are the first lines of beneficiary? Who knows the data? Where is the information? Who is taking the lead role? And if it is someone choose to use the non-Islamic system, they would have gone to their lawyers and so on, and they would have applied for certain things, and they put on papers, and nobody contests it, and you go to the court and you get it because you were very transparent. You put something on the paper with some fine writing, something's on the daily newspapers with some fine writings that nobody look at really, and then your business or your family's business was on papers, or your friend's business was on papers, and somebody in the family decide to use the process, and they were very transparent, they put on the papers that nobody looks at, and then they went to court and they said, well, you know, I am one of the surviving beneficiaries. I went through all the due process, I put it on the papers and so on, I now want the court to grant me A, B, C, D, E. People understand this only too well, and they know what to do. I know some persons who are listening might be feeling very sad because of what I'm saying, because it might very well fall into the exactness of what they would have gone through. And some people may be thinking, is it true that I can really be entering into that area of kufr by disregarding what Allah says in the Holy Quran with regards to what should have happened? And if it is I am aware, or if it is I am aware or not. First, let us say I am aware. If I was aware of it and I failed to access it or failed to utilize it as a template, what is my position now? Can I reverse it? Can I get back from those who I would have falsely enriched? And could I put it back in place with regards to those who should have been the natural beneficiaries based on Sharia? Can I fix that? And let us assume now that you are none the wiser. Could I go now and take a snapshot of my husband's assets, or my father's assets, or my brother's assets? Could I now take a snapshot of it and say, well, Imam, there's no longer 10,000 in the account. It has 0 in the account. But at the time of his death, there was 10,000 in the account. And there's no longer this land and this land and this land, or this property. But at the time of his death, it really had this property, these properties, and a boat and 2 cars and so on. And this would have been, as far as I know, the snapshot at the point in time when he would have died. And these were his surviving relatives. He left behind a wife and 2 children, 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters. And he left behind his mother, his father, his grandmother, grandfather, he left behind other wives, and he left behind children with these wives. What was supposed to happen based on this particular scenario? Surely we can work it out. Surely we could help to do justice to it. But how does it become our business? How do we get involved? And I'm saying there are too many situations where individuals have now come to learn that no one sought after their interests at the time when the assets were around. And now they come to learn that they have been deprived in a very serious way of what it is they were naturally entitled to. So going back on the topic of Hajj, Hajj is a current scenario, present tense. No one should leave for Hajj. No one should leave for Hajj outside of doing justice to two things. One, they should prepare a will. They should prepare a will and make sure that that will has witnesses and so on. And of course, it should not be a total secret. Some people don't mind doing a will, but they are afraid of the beneficiaries. The potential beneficiaries, what it is due and owing to them. Persons who do a will while they are alive, of course, they can still use 1/3 of that, their assets, and make a decision on it. If they pass away, however, nobody else cannot take 1/3 and make a decision on their behalf. And persons who are doing a will, or persons who come to learn that they are sick, and they are going to doctors are saying, well, you know, you will die maybe in a week or two. You cannot now, having learned that death is approaching, to treat with your assets in a way contrary, because you have now been told that, okay, doctors are saying that you are terminally ill. You are terminally ill. You cannot now make decisions on your assets as though you were not terminally ill. And those who are, maybe those who would have studied the topic of inheritance and wills and so on and so on and so on, would know this only too well. So it's very, very important for us, those of us first and foremost who are going to perform the Hajj, all those who are going with me, inshallah, of course, it will become a harsh requirement. We will ensure that a will is done. And all those, the second point I was raising, those who are also performing the Hajj, they will likewise be required to prepare a simple letter that should you pass away while you are in Hajj, permissions and so on must be given from your relatives and who have you for your burial in Saudi Arabia. Because I'm saying there are a number of times when persons die, and here in Trinidad and Tobago, we try our best to practice it as best as we can. Somebody died today and we bury them today. If you are in Saudi Arabia and you die, you may have an expectation that the burial will happen even faster. It doesn't work so. There's a communication that is required from Trinidad and Tobago, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to identify that the person would have died and so on. And a number of paperwork must happen before one is buried. And sometimes that takes a while to happen, 2-3 days to happen. And the burial is delayed and it takes you longer to bury in Saudi Arabia when you may think it is less time. It should be less time. So this is the start of it, inheritance and wills, and I'm encouraging firstly that everyone should have a will. And I really wish I could volunteer in some way to assist people, but I tend to volunteer things that I don't have enough time to do justice to. Persons may start coming and then you have, and so, but your imams in your communities and your leaders, your scholars, you should try your best to engage them in conversations, and should they need some kind of help, the institutions in Trinidad and Tobago, I'm quite sure they can access the right assistance from the right places. So that is my start, inshallah, for today. The scenario I would have made mention of, the scenario is a simple scenario. There are many persons who we know who would have passed away, scenario number one. And the survivors that they would have left behind had a natural entitlement that cannot be altered. It cannot be altered. Whatever Allah decided already on this topic of inheritance, that cannot be altered. And now we can do a snapshot to say whether the person who died was tardy because he did not prepare a will, and the box stops there, or whether it is the right thing to say he would have failed to do the right thing, but others who are survivors, who are family members and beneficiaries, they had a duty to also find out what is supposed to happen, and then there are believers in the community, leaders and well-wishers who are aware whether or not they had any responsibility on their shoulder, likewise to ensure that the right thing was supposed to happen and it did in fact happen. All these are up in the air because I'm not giving any answer for any of those three scenarios. I'm not saying that the person who died was tardy. I'm saying that when somebody passes away, that person leaves behind him. He has rights on the persons who he leaves behind him. He has rights. And basic right, first and foremost, he cannot bury himself. The person who died cannot bury himself. So therefore, who has to bury him? Could everybody casually say, well, okay, he died and I am not going to organize to have him paid properly and dressed properly and have a proper janaza? Could everybody make a decision and say nobody will although he is a believer, nobody is taking responsibility? That's something, there's a word called fard kifaya. Very, very interesting. It is compulsory on every single believer. However, if none of the believers do justice to it, all will get sin. All will get sin. And if at least one person do justice to it, then the sin will be relieved from all the others. So therefore, the deceased one has rights on the living. The dead has rights on the living. And that right is they must bury him. They must perform his janazah. And now the question comes up now. On whom does that responsibility lie as it relates to his inheritance, his will? If he had a will or didn't have a written will, did he have to have a will? And if he did not have a will, does Sharia have any place in his life? How do we get the courts of Trinidad and Tobago, the Muslims and so on, how do we get them to buy in that this is how his assets should be distributed to the survivors, to the beneficiaries, to the inheritors? And this, I'm saying, sometimes we have more questions than answers. I've had many situations that came before me. I sat with many elders in Trinidad and Tobago on the topic of wills and inheritance. Some of the stories end nicely, and some of the stories end very, very ugly. Women, in some cases, marry new husbands, and the new husbands, of course, benefited more than the children left behind, and the story goes on. Men marry new wives, and of course, the new wives would have benefited all the assets that she would have had, that she would have had her own rights in terms of how it should be distributed. And the story goes on. And it is unfortunate that it has not become maybe a bigger topic in the Muslim community. But I felt today would have been a good day to leave behind maybe some of the competing topics for our time, because there are a number of competing topics of Hajj. We want to hear about Hajj, people actually going to Hajj. But out of all the population of Trinidad and Tobago, how many people go in Hajj? So let us say 400 persons go in Hajj. Okay, so the 400 persons don't need to hear about Hajj today again. They have gotten a lot of information on Hajj, a topic that is absent in even those who are going for Hajj, which can also benefit those who are not going for Hajj, is that topic of inheritance and wills. So I'm making a special plea to individuals, of course, because it takes a lot of time, a lot of doing and so on. It might be difficult to sit with everyone, but I am giving serious consideration to forming a 3-man committee and trying to assist in terms of inheritance and wills. But of course, it will compete with all the other things I am doing. I am currently, as you all know, I'm Senior Qurbani for Venezuela. That in itself is a lot of work preparing across there, organizing here. Plus, I'm going for Hajj, inshallah. We are leaving on the 29th of this month, inshallah. May Allah make it easy for both scenarios parallel to happen successfully, inshallah. And now I'm talking about inheritance and wills. It's a whole different topic. I spoke in the same program here, our topic of marriage. So many people are hoping that their daughters and sons would find the right partner. And they wish somebody could spend some time in their personal business, trying to bring persons from different parts of the country just for them to meet with the parents and parents meet and understand how best they can influence us, their children's life in a positive way as it relates to marriage. A lot of work. So against all this background, I'm also, I have announced it before, but I'm leaving my work very shortly. I intend to take early retirement and so on. I'm still 49, I'm not 50 as yet, but I intend to give some more time for these type of things, Islamic work. And I pray to Allah that He would accept me, that when I decide on that, and I decide to do Islamic work full time, I will be able to do justice to some of these gray areas. But going back to the topic of wills and inheritance, I'm making a special plea. Start knocking on the door. We'll figure it out together. We may make mistakes, but it's better we make mistakes than we don't even try at all. And we leave without any will, and our assets are distributed in a way that it should not have been distributed. And persons who are not supposed to be beneficiaries turn out to be beneficiaries. And I'm saying that you are the benefactor. You are the ones who are giving off all the things. If you want to be Sharia compliant, you want your assets to be distributed the way it should be distributed according to Allah's laws, then of course you need to make an effort by starting to record the information properly and start working on it properly and make sure that you do justice to yourself. Do justice to it. I would love to sit with many people and help them put it together and so on. I've done it for pilgrims who go for Hajj. I already start doing a number of work with some of them and so on. And we have done a number of things, but I'm afraid to open the floodgates because it is important. People may want to do it. And just to do a will for someone, it means you have to meet with them a few times. One, to meet to record what they could remember. And two, to formalize the instrument and so on. And it will take a little while doing. So all I'm saying to you, the viewing audience, wills and inheritance, it is not good enough to benefit from someone's assets and so on, and enrich yourself in a way that is contrary to Islamic Sharia, contrary to the words of Allah. It is not good enough for you to say that I am accepting this benefit even though I am aware that Sharia was not taken into consideration in terms of determining how it should be distributed. It is not good enough. It's not good enough to casualize it. Because when you know what Allah says, or you know Allah said something, you don't even know what Allah says, but you know Allah already ruled on this matter. Once Allah rules on a matter, there's no room for our personal opinion. And we should be scared to eat out of the benefits of the orphans, those who would have been left behind, orphans, who no longer have a father. It would be wrong for you to try to nourish yourself, because if you try to do that with the orphans' wealth or the orphans' right to that wealth, then you would have been doing yourself a great harm, and it is like opening the doorway and walking out of Islam. Kufr. It is as though you have accepted that you no longer want to hear what Allah says. You don't want to know what Allah says. You don't want to apply what Allah says. And when you take that strong decision, knowing Allah has already ruled on this matter, and take a decision to go contrary to the rulings of Allah, then you have walked out of Islam. And there is no way that you will get away with depriving those who have a claim of right on that inheritance. There's no way you're going to get away. So this is, again, very scary. It's an unfortunate reality. As I mentioned to you, I sat with a number of people who would have come to me with regards to they were deprived of anything at all. They got nothing from their father's assets and so on. And when we do all our investigations, now we don't have any legal powers to say we can go to the police station and say, well, this man would have enriched himself falsely with this person's assets and so on. The laws of Trinidad and Tobago is silent on Islamic wills and so on. So therefore, for us to lobby as Muslims to have Islamic wills and inheritance enshrined in our laws of Trinidad and Tobago, where every creed and race have an equal place and so on. There's no one lobbying for that recognition and for Muslims to have the rightful place and space in our laws as it relates to inheritance. And of course, again, all these gray areas, somebody has to start championing it. And I'm saying, before we can champion those situations, let us put a stop to it and make sure we ourselves record in some way that, well, if it should we pass away, Sharia is the only, not one of the only, is the only way in which we want to have our assets distributed. You have a right when you are alive to do whatever you choose with a small portion, 1/3. Outside of that, if it is you come to learn that you are terminally ill, you have lost that opportunity, because now you have lost the opportunity to spend out of the assets freely. You have not lost the opportunity to determine the 1/3, but you have lost the opportunity when you become terminally ill to deal with your property however you want. Sharia compliance now kicks in because you have been declared as terminally ill. If you are not terminally ill, you are living normal as ever, your assets are your assets and you are free to do whatever you choose to do with it. All right? But let us be careful, because there are too many tears, too many persons who are crying tears, because those with louder voices, those who have strong arms in their circles, whether it be family or non-family member, would have wrongfully taken from the orphans and utilized the orphans' wealth and assets for their own personal gain. And even when the individuals grow old, the laws of Trinidad and Tobago has no place to recognize them and recognize their losses. So even when they reach an age where they understand better what should have happened, there is no space in the laws of Trinidad and Tobago that they can go to court and they can say, based on Sharia, this is what I am entitled to as the only son. I should have gotten this. As the only daughter, I should have gotten this. There's no place that one can lodge their complaint to. Even if you go to your leaders, your imams and so on, and they spend some time on your concern, and they tell you that what should have happened is this. Enforcement of what should have happened, our imams don't have that clout, that say, that he cannot go now and say, as the imam, I give you 14 days to do A, B, C, and if you don't do A, B, and C, I will do so. We don't have those kind of things in Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm asking basically that all those who are listening to this topic of wills and inheritance, those who are going to Hajj, make an extra effort, inshallah, to do a will before you pass away, before you travel, inshallah. In the event that one passes away, at least you would have done justice to it. The will is not only for those who are performing Hajj, every single person should have a will. And if you are traveling, it should be more binding on you. All right, so inshallah, I am announcing that. I'm also announcing that the Qurbani in Venezuela continues this year, inshallah. The shares is $1,000, just like last year before, and so on. This is the 4th consecutive year, and inshallah, my phone number is there, 4699372, and maybe we will eventually see a ticker tape. I haven't yet spoken to the relevant persons in the IBM, but we'll have that out to the way by today, inshallah. I will see how best we can quicken up so those who are ready to pay and so on, there's 4699372. Call me for now, and then we'll take the rest from there, inshallah. So until next week, thank you for viewing the challenges of the Muslim Ummah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu.